This is the Poetry and Yarn podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Stevens, crochet and knit technical editor and teacher. If this is the first time that you're catching the podcast, you should know that the video version is available on YouTube. But if you're interested in the audio only version or the show notes with links to the things I talk about on this podcast, you can check that out on the blog, poetryandyarn.com. Okay. So I've had a really good week since the last podcast. I've done a lot of technical editing that I've gotten done, cleaned up some patterns. I taught my usual crochet class, and I also taught my monthly general crafting class that I teach in Spanish. I hesitate to say bilingual. I'm bilingual on the level of like a 6-year-old. So I can get my point across. I can mostly understand what's being said to me, but I'm going to make grammatical errors. But even though I do, it's still fun to go in and do projects with the women that I work with. Let's see. Also this week, I got my reviewer's copy of Colorwork Knitting by Sarah White. So I'm going to be going through that this week, and I'll probably post my review up on the blog sometimes in the next 2 weeks. I'll definitely mention what I do on the podcast, so make sure to subscribe to my videos on YouTube so that you'll know when it's out. I've decided for this podcast, we're going to add a giveaway at the end. So stay tuned towards the end of our 10 minutes or so. I will show you how to enter to win this awesome lemongrass scented lotion bar from Milk and Honey. So after my first podcast, one of the comments I got was from Batya7 on Ravelry, who asked me to kind of explain a bit more when I mentioned that I'm a combination knitter, and that's how I knit. So I thought about it. Best way to go through this is to kind of flip the perspective so you can see things from my angle. So what exactly does combination knitting mean? When we use the term combination, we're referring to the orientation of your loops or your stitches that are on your needle. If you've learned to knit in the United States, chances are all your stitches are oriented so that the right leg of the stitch is in front of the needle and the left leg of the stitch is behind the needle. If you're a combination knitter, some of your stitches are going to be oriented the opposite way, and the way that ends up happening is usually with how you purl. So typically, if you do continental or Portuguese style knitting, when you purl, you wrap the yarn over your needle and pull it through. And that results in a stitch that's oriented the exact same way. Right side on the front, left side on the back. If you're a combination knitter, you purl by bringing the yarn under your needle to pull through. And when you do that, you'll see your stitches are oriented the opposite way. It's the left strand of the stitch that's on the front and the right strand that's on the back. So I really like purling this way because it goes much more quickly for me than a standard continental style purl. It evens out my stitches. So I used to have a problem with being able to tell which stitches I did on a wrong side row or a right side row in stockinette. This kind of took care of that problem for me. But I had to adjust to the fact that my stitches on my next row are now oriented differently. It's the left side that's on the front and the right side that's on the back. If you start to knit and you're used to the front being on the right, you can actually end up twisting your stitch, and it'll be kind of obvious here that after I knit the stitch, if you look at it, you can see the base is twisted. So what you have to do is you have to remember to work through the inside middle of the stitch when you knit, and then you won't twist your stitches. So that's the main thing that you have to look out for, but then you also have to be careful when you start to do decreases. if you're used to doing a knit two together a certain way, you can very easily do a knit two together through the interior of 2 stitches like this. But then you'll find out that your stitches lean to the left instead of to the right. Typically a knit two together is supposed to lean to the right. Suddenly you've got the opposite. So actually what's happening there is, instead of doing a classic knit two together, you're doing more of a knit two through the back loop. So you have to kind of be aware of that and compensate for that by doing your knit two together this way, so that it'll lean the proper direction. I find that the decreases are where you're more likely to get in trouble with combination knitting, and you just have to kind of get used to it and get in the groove of what needle position makes it lean right and what needle position makes it lean left, and you know, keep trying that and getting used to that, and eventually you'll be able to do it without even having to put a lot of thought into it. But that's basically combination knitting, that doing the purl stitch that way, where instead of bringing the yarn over, you bring the yarn under, orients the stitch differently, and then you have to compensate for that on the next row. Yeah, so that's basically combination knitting in a nutshell, which is what I do. It's my preferred way to work. Everybody has their own style. I find purling that way goes very quickly, very nicely. I'm not sure if you can tell, I'm actually in the stages of beginning to get a sunburn from being out at my son's baseball game today. The surprising thing was I did not knit or crochet a stitch while I was out there. I just sat in the sun and kind of roasted. You know, I have 2 modes. I either go very pale or very lobster. And as you can see, I'm kind of transitioning towards lobster now. So this upcoming week, I'm looking forward to, because I'm starting my beginner's crochet class at my local yarn store, which is New England Yarn and Spindle in Bristol, Connecticut. It's really fantastic. The class is actually already filled up. We've already hit our maximum, but we've started a waiting list for people who are interested, so we can possibly start a second session going for that. But I'm really looking forward to it, because it's going to be like people that I'm introducing to crochet for the first time, and also using your knitting background as a knitter to kind of speed up your crochet learning, and how you can take what you already know and use that to your advantage. So in the beginning, I said we're going to do a giveaway this week. This is a lotion bar that's lemongrass scented. This one still has the original company name, Milk and Honey. They've recently rebranded themselves as Love Leche. So you can find their products at loveandleche.com. That's loveandleche.com. This one, I'm going to open it just to show you. Huge size lotion bar. I love the lemongrass scent. So if you want to enter to win, first of all, this giveaway is open internationally. So unless you live in a place where the government is like, you are not allowed to win awesome stuff online, as long as your government doesn't say that, you're fine. You can enter the giveaway by emailing prize@poetryandyarn.com. That's PRIZE @poetryandyarn.com. And let's see, I think we should have like a special code word to include in your email for the entry. So for this one, let's make the code word combination, since we're talking about combination knitting. So yeah, shoot me that email at prize@poetryandyarn.com, and on the next episode, I'll use the random number generator and we'll pick a winner, and maybe this could be coming to your mailbox. So I hope you all have an awesome week, that you're enjoying beautiful weather like I've got here. I've started my little plants to plant outdoors, but one of the nice things that has happened is I've realized one of my herb plants that I had outside in a pot has survived the winter. It had these twigs and I thought it was completely dead, but now they're starting to get little green buds. So I'm really excited, even though, and this is going to sound ridiculous, I'm not sure what herb it is. I had the herb in a pot, and that was last summer. And so I'm not sure if it's oregano or rosemary. Maybe on the podcast in a couple weeks, I'll do a taste test once there are enough buds that I can like pluck some leaves off and start trying to figure it out from there. But have a great week. I hope it's full of fun with yarn, with stitching, and doing what you love. See you next week.